Last month at Interior.
Secretary Haaland this week announced major milestones for the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative, which she launched in June 2021 as the first ever comprehensive effort by the federal government to recognize the troubled legacy of past federal Indian boarding school policies. The department released the second and final volume of the investigative report led by Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs Brian Newland. The report expands on what was previously known about the number and details of these institutions, including attendee deaths and the number of burial sites, participation of religious institutions and organizations, and federal dollars spent to operate these locations.
One of the reasons I launched the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative was to ensure that this important story was told, that all of America knows of the intergenerational impacts of these policies, and that we as a nation take steps to heal from them.
Secretary Haaland this week applauded the selection of the National Park Service's historic Moravian Bethlehem District in Pennsylvania to the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization's World Heritage List. That list highlights cultural and natural heritage sites around the world considered to be of outstanding value to humanity. It's the first transnational World Heritage listing in the U.S. The designation also includes sites in Germany and Northern Ireland. Assistant Secretary for Insular and International Affairs Carmen Cantor wrapped up her trip to Southeast Asia this week with a visit to Indonesia, where she reaffirmed Interior's conservation partnerships across the region. The visit underscored the department's long-term commitment to Southeast Asia through the International Technical Assistance Program, as well as investments in wildlife conservation and protected areas and partnerships with regional organizations. Interior this week announced a $20 million investment through President Biden's Investing in America agenda to bolster climate resilience in Hawaii. Funding will be awarded to 17 native Hawaiian organizations to restore native ecosystems and plants and enhance food security while incorporating indigenous knowledge and practices. Island ecosystems like those found in Hawaii are incredibly biodiverse and more susceptible to climate-related impacts such as wildfires and warmer and more acidic oceans. Orphaned oil and gas wells are polluting backyards, recreation areas, and community spaces across the country. Interior this week announced $52 million from the President's Investing in America agenda for Colorado, Illinois, and West Virginia to clean up that legacy pollution. Those investments won't just address cleaning up hazardous sites. They'll also help create good-paying union jobs, catalyze economic growth, and help protect public health and the environment from harmful methane leaks. Happy 47th birthday to the Office of Surface Mining, Reclamation, and Enforcement. OSMRE was created on August 3, 1977, with the signing of the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act to administer programs for controlling the impacts of surface coal mining operations, assisting states and tribes with abandoned mineland reclamation, restoring natural spaces, and creating a better future for all Americans. We're also celebrating the 4th anniversary of the Great American Outdoors Act this week. That law, which passed with strong bipartisan support, makes unprecedented investments in national parks, public lands, and Bureau of Indian Education-funded schools. To celebrate, entrance fees will be waived this Sunday, August 4th, at all fee-collecting public lands managed by the department. And our social media picture of the week, arrowleaf balsam root blooms in the summer sun at Red Rock Lakes National Wildlife Refuge. Located in the high elevation of the Centennial Valley in the southwestern region of Montana, the refuge is renowned for its natural beauty and is considered one of the most diverse landscapes within the National Wildlife Refuge system. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. That's This Week at Interior.
Last month at Interior.
Crater Lake, Yosemite, Zion. The legendary national parks and public lands of the United States. We all know them and make hundreds of millions of visits each year. But stop for a second. Look closer. Past Old Faithful, the red rocks and redwoods, beyond the monuments that captivated your imagination on middle school field trips and family vacations, across the Smokies, over the Wichita Mountains Wildlife Refuge, up to the Hamburger Rock Campground, and through the front doors of Many Farms High School in the heart of Navajo Nation. Look past the seemingly endless moments of beauty and find the small, perfect moments right nearby, where a short walk through the woods is waiting for you on the weekend, where there may be picnicking, bird watching, or fishing, where pulling over to a scenic overlook on an exhausting car ride can reawaken your senses. Size, scale, visitor tallies are not all these lands offer. Just outside are places to learn, be inspired, and find joy and peace. Places that exist across all of these United States, bringing together our families and communities. To the places we go to reconnect, relax, and reflect, there's a lot behind the scenic and hidden from the panoramas that's done to make it so. The words maintenance and upkeep may not be the words of inspirational speech, but their results speak for themselves. When a tree falls in the woods, it's our job to hear it and make sure it doesn't block a path or damage any facilities. Maintaining, healing, and restoring access to these beautiful lands that give us so much is what the Great American Outdoors Act is all about. The Great American Outdoors Act is making the impact in every single U.S. state and across every ecosystem, from frozen tundra to rainforests. Whether it's improving access to safe drinking water or rebuilding bridges at a national park, bolstering wildland fire management capacity at the Bureau of Land Management, restoring paths and upgrading accessibility for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, or providing safe learning environments for students at Bureau of Indian Education schools. Behind the scenes, there are thousands of dedicated staff at the U.S. Department of the Interior working to leave a legacy on our public lands. With an expansive list of nearly 400 projects, the Great American Outdoors Act Legacy Restoration Fund is working to ensure America's natural spaces are open for our visitors, our communities, and our employees now and decades to come. Since 2021, this critical funding has led to legacy investments in the renovation, replacement, and refurbishment of thousands of assets on park lands, at tribe-owned schools, and many valuable public sites. But there's still more work to be done. The Great American Outdoors Act, a legacy in progress. For more information, visit doi.gov/GOA.
Last month at Interior.
This week was a big one for outdoor recreation at the department. Secretary Haaland, Acting Deputy Secretary Laura Daniel Davis, and other Interior leaders and partners hosted a virtual event this week celebrating the 4th anniversary of the signing of the Great American Outdoors Act, or GOA, and its tremendous impact across America's national parks, wildlife refuges, recreation areas, and Bureau of Indian Education funded schools. Interior's GOA projects support an average of 17,000 jobs and contribute an average of $1.9 billion annually to the economy, benefiting urban, suburban, and rural areas across the nation. Acting Deputy Secretary Daniel Davis then traveled to Arizona to announce the distribution of $325 million from the Land and Water Conservation Fund Stateside Assistance Program to all 50 states, U.S. territories, and the District of Columbia. It's the largest annual distribution from the program since 1979. Investments from the LWCF, which was permanently funded through the Great American Outdoors Act, are helping support the Biden-Harris administration's America the Beautiful initiative by funding locally led outdoor recreation and conservation projects that protect and enhance access to America's great outdoors. And the department this week also announced $46.7 million in funding through the Outdoor Recreation Legacy Partnership Program for the redevelopment or creation of 10 local parks in 9 states. The ORLAP program, established in 2014 and funded through the Land and Water Conservation Fund, enables urban communities to create new outdoor recreation spaces, reinvigorate existing parks, and form connections between people and the outdoors in economically underserved communities. Interior this week announced nearly $7 million through the Indian Youth Service Corps for indigenous-led conservation projects across the nation. The Corps was launched by Secretary Haaland in 2022 to provide meaningful education, employment, and training opportunities to indigenous youth through conservation projects on public and tribal lands and Hawaiian homelands. The funding is part of an overall $15 million committed from the President's Investing in America agenda for core programs in underserved communities and further advances the American Climate Corps, the administration's effort to empower a new, diverse generation of Americans to become part of a growing clean energy and climate resilience workforce. Interior and the Bureau of Reclamation this week announced a nearly $105 million investment as part of the President's Investing in America agenda for 67 water conservation and efficiency projects that will enhance drought resilience across the nation. The projects, located in 11 states, will save more than 111,000 acre-feet of water annually. That's enough water to supply approximately 447,000 people for a year. Acting Deputy Secretary Laura Daniel Davis delivered remarks this week during the annual awards ceremony for Women in Federal Law Enforcement Incorporated, or WIFL, which highlights the achievements of women law enforcement officers from across the federal government. This year marks 25 years since WIFL began its work to acknowledge and elevate the roles of women officers in federal service. And our social media picture of the week, the Bodie Island Lighthouse under the Milky Way at Cape Hatteras National Seashore on North Carolina's Outer Banks. Bodie Island is one of 5 lighthouses on the Outer Banks, and for more than 150 years, its powerful light beam has served as a welcome beacon for sailors navigating the treacherous waters known as the Graveyard of the Atlantic. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. That's This Week at Interior.
Last month at Interior.
Secretary Haaland was in the Oval Office this week as President Biden designated Springfield 1908 Race Riot National Monument as America's newest national park site, the 8th addition to the national park system during the Biden-Harris administration. The new national monument will help tell a more complete story of America by spotlighting the violent, racially motivated riot in President Abraham Lincoln's hometown of Springfield, Illinois in 1908, when rioters lynched 2 black men, looted businesses, and burned down homes. The riot ultimately served as a catalyst for important steps in the civil rights movement. Secretary Haaland and Assistant Secretary for Fish and Wildlife and Parks Shannon Estenos were in Maine this week, where they highlighted conservation and preservation efforts underway through the National Park Service. They visited the Francis Perkins Homestead in Newcastle and held a community meeting to learn about the community's vision for its care and management. Later, they joined federal, state, tribal, and community members for a celebration and ribbon cutting at Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument for a new contact station to provide visitors a location for orientation and information through exhibits designed with Wabanaki artistry and knowledge that explain the monument's landscape and significance. The Department and Bureau of Ocean Energy Management this week announced the execution of the nation's first floating offshore wind energy research lease in Maine. The research array will allow the state, fishing community, wildlife experts, the offshore wind industry, and others to conduct in-depth studies and evaluate floating offshore wind as a renewable energy source in the region. BOEM also completed a wind energy auction last week for 2 lease areas offshore the states of Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. That lease sale brought in more than $92 million in winning bids. The Bureau of Reclamation this week announced a $7 million investment through President Biden's Investing in America agenda to boost drought resiliency and efficiency in Texas and New Mexico. The announcement comes as the department celebrates the 2-year anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act, which has delivered transformational investments for drought resilience across the West. The Office of Surface Mining, Reclamation, and Enforcement this week announced nearly $6 million to address dangerous and polluting abandoned mine lands in Iowa, while creating good-paying, family-sustaining jobs and catalyzing economic opportunity. Millions of Americans live less than a mile from an abandoned coal mine. Now more than $11.3 billion from the president's bipartisan infrastructure law is expected to address nearly all of the currently inventoried abandoned mine lands in the nation, which will help communities address and eliminate dangerous conditions and pollution caused by historic coal mining. The U.S. Geological Survey this week officially opened its new hydrologic instrumentation facility on the University of Alabama campus. The facility provides new opportunities for advancing water science and technology, with its team of about 50 USGS employees working alongside university students and staff, strengthening existing partnerships and creating new ones as it continues its tradition as the national hub for water monitoring technologies. Interior this week announced the Secretary's establishment of the Willamette Valley Conservation Area in Oregon. The 600-acre parcel will protect crucial habitat for threatened and endangered species and comes about after extensive consultation between the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, tribal nations, state and local partners, and private landowners. It's the 572nd unit of the National Wildlife Refuge System and the 5th new unit established under Secretary Deb Haaland's leadership. Happy birthday to the National Park Service, which turns 108 years old on August 25th. And a hearty thank you to the more than 20,000 National Park Service employees who work tirelessly to care for America's 431 national park sites and work with communities across the nation to help preserve America's best idea. And our social media picture of the week, the grassy meadows of Mount Rainier National Park in Washington come alive with the colors of wildflowers. Folks come from all around the world to see these brief but stunning blooms, which reach their peak in August. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. That's This Week at Interior.